One scorching afternoon at Three Corners Alo in Lebialem division, as dust from passing vehicles settled on my goods, my eldest son Bekong arrived on his motorcycle. Standing over my humble stall, he spat out words that cut deeper than any knife. "I told you I'm expecting important visitors from Chang. What will they think when they discover my mother sells vegetables like a common Bayam? His eyes, once so like his father's, now burned with shame. Shame of me. Shame of the business that made him who he is today. Shame for the humble trade that generated the wealth he now wants to control. 23 years I had bent my back at this junction, my calloused hands trading to put him through university. That day, something inside me hardened like the red earth after heavy rain. I smiled quietly, knowing what he didn't know or never cared to know. This illiterate market woman he despised owned land worth more than he could imagine. For years I had wrapped my power in silence. But that afternoon, I resolved to teach my son the costliest lesson of his life, that the strength of an African mother isn't in her voice but in her patience. And when that patience ends, even mountains tremble. My name is Mama Alem, but most people at Three Corners Alo just call me Mama Alem, the Bayam Selam who has sold goods at the junction for ages. I've spent most of my life bent over my roadside wooden stall, my back curved like a question mark from decades of stooping. Before I share my journey, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share this video to help inspire others. I remember that evening clearly. The crimson sun was bleeding across the hilly landscape of Alo as my calloused hands arranged the last heap of assorted items on my wooden stall. At 62, my body carries the memory of more than 30 years of rising before the roosters to set up my small business at this strategic junction. At this gateway to Lebialem, Three Corners Alo. "Hello, Mama Alem," called Madame Tendong from her stall nearby. The sun was merciless today. I nodded, wiping sweat from my brow with the edge of my cloth. And yet we survive, eh? We always survive. What Madame Tendong didn't know, what nobody knew, was that survival wasn't my only accomplishment. Every evening, away from prying eyes, I would open my worn journal, a habit my late husband Tangong taught me. He was a dedicated teacher who insisted I record everything, thoughts, earnings, dreams. I had a limited formal schooling, but Tangong, with his teacher's mindset, never saw that as a limitation. Where I felt inadequate, he saw potential. My only post-primary education was 2 years at the Rural Artisan Center in Fontem, popularly called SAR-SM. Many parents often considered SAR-SM as a last resort for their kids. Yet over the years, SAR-SM programs have set up thousands, if not millions, of Cameroonians for success in life. Those 2 years at SAR-SM Fontem changed my life. I learned home economics, commerce, clothes making, needlework, and a host of other practical skills. We, SAR-SM trainees, were taught to stretch meager resources to turn daily challenges into opportunities. What others saw as humble survival skills, I recognized as tools for building wealth, slowly, silently, 1 franc at a time. For 14 years, I meticulously documented every franc earned and spent, secretly investing what others dismissed as petty trading. People like me are called Bayam Selam, often with a hint of condescension. I heard the whispers when Tangong died of tuberculosis just 8 years into our marriage. "She'll beg or remarry," they said, glancing at my 3 young children with pity. But I refused to become the pitiful widow they expected, the desperate woman forced to beg or remarry for survival. Instead, I uncovered the secret that would quietly transform my fortunes: disciplined saving with the local credit union. I still remember the skepticism in their eyes when I joined the Menji Credit Union as one of its very first members. It was a leap into the unknown, but the union's philosophy was different. They taught us not to just hoard our money, but to make it work through responsible borrowing and investment. With trembling hands, I took my first loan, small but heavy with hope. The interest rate was gentle, merciful even. I used it to buy my first patch of land, repaying the loan franc by franc, never defaulting. That land became my foothold in a world that often felt eager to cast me adrift. With each successful repayment, my confidence grew. Soon I took another loan, this time aiming higher. Brick by brick, I built not just a house but a legacy for my children. Over the years, my prudent investments multiplied. I didn't just stop at one piece of land. I acquired several, making careful choices, always watching, listening, and learning from those who had walked the path before me. The most significant were my plots in Chang, the bustling university town just 10 kilometers away. People laughed when I bought land there. Back then, it was nothing but bush and promise. But I saw what others missed. The university center was expanding, and I knew that where students and teachers flock, prosperity is never far behind. Now, those very same plots have soared in value, worth more than most in Alo could ever dream of possessing in their lifetime. Sometimes, in the quiet of evening, I look at the deeds, locked safely away, and I remember the doubters, their whispers fading like the twilight, proof that sometimes Lebialem's dreams can outgrow even the wildest ambitions of her doubters and perhaps her own children. My mother used to say, "A woman without roots is like a floating leaf. Find your soil, daughter, and dig deep." The soil I found was scattered strategically, some in Alo, close to home, but my most valuable acquisition in Chang, where education was transforming rural land into urban gold. I still remember the day I signed the papers for the Chang land. I touched the earth, letting it crumble through my fingers, and wept when no one was looking, the first time I had cried since burying Tangong, my husband. That land became my dignity's anchor, my silent triumph. But what I never expected was that the greatest threat to the stability that this anchor provided would come from the very child I had sacrificed everything to raise. I heard the motorcycle before I saw it, that aggressive revving, the unnecessary speed. My firstborn son, Bekong, announced himself this way now, as though the entire village needed to witness his arrival. He pulled up in a cloud of red dust, his polished leather shoes so out of place against our dirt roads. At 32, he had grown tall and broad-shouldered like his father, but where Tangong's eyes held warmth, my sons burned with cold ambition. "Still here, Ma?" His words dripped with impatience, each one heavy with the arrogance he now wore like a badge. "I told you I'm expecting visitors from Chang. You should be home now in your best outfit. My guests are important people. What will they think when they learn my mother sells vegetables at a roadside junction like a common Lebialem?" I felt my cheeks burn with shame as the nearby traders lowered their eyes, pretending not to hear. My lips quivered as I struggled for words. This was the child I had raised. This was what my sacrifices had created. "This junction has fed you since you were a boy," I replied quietly, rearranging my goods. There is every shame," he hissed, grabbing my elbow with enough force to bruise. "Do you think the CEO of MTN's mother sits selling peppers and palm oil? Or the mother of the director of Camtel? Men of status come from homes of status." I pulled away gently, feeling the humiliation very suffocating as passers-by turned and stared as a son rough-handled his own mother. "Then perhaps you should find such a home, Bekong." His face hardened. "I intend to, which is why we need to discuss the property in Chang again, tonight." As he roared away on his motorcycle, I stood motionless, the weight of my day's work suddenly unbearable. For 3 months now, Bekong had pressed me about the Chang property, at first with casual questions, then suggestions, and now with barely veiled threats. "What use is prime real estate to an old woman?" he had asked just last week. "I have plans, Ma, connections. Do you want to be remembered as the mother who held back her son from greatness?" Each word cut deeper than he knew. Each demand chipped away at the love I had nurtured for him since he was nothing but a flutter beneath my heart. The compound was unusually quiet when I arrived home. My youngest son, Defang, 19 and gentle-hearted, sat on the veranda mending a fishing net. He jumped up to take my heavy basket. "Ma, you should have called me to the junction," he scolded softly. "These loads are too heavy for you now." I patted his cheek, feeling the contrast between my rough palm and his smooth skin. "And take you from your studies? Never. Where is your sister?" "Sister Awandia is inside preparing groundnut soup. Brother Bekong came and—" He hesitated, lowering his voice. "He's been drinking palm wine since noon. He brought men from Chang." My heart sank. Through the open window I could hear male laughter, the distinctive timbre of my eldest son's voice rising above the others, boastful and loud. Inside, my small living room was filled with cigarette smoke. 3 men in pressed shirts lounged on the furniture my late husband had built with his own hands, while Bekong held court, gesturing expansively. Prime location, not too far from the university. People have constructed immensely there, shooting up the value of the lands around that area. I'm thinking a cyber cafe, maybe a mini-mart. He stopped mid-sentence when I entered, his smile faltering for just a moment before widening artificially. "Here she is, my mother, the strongest woman in Lebialem." He strode over, throwing an arm around my shoulders that felt more like a restraint than an embrace. "Ma, these are my business partners. Important men who can change our fortune." The men nodded, their eyes assessing my worn clothes. My headscarf faded from too many washings. One man with a gold watch that caught the light smiled thinly. "Mama, your son tells us you're sitting on a gold mine in Chang. Very smart investment you made." I stiffened. How much had Bekong revealed? My properties were my security, documented in my journal but rarely discussed openly. These were not for strangers' ears. Before I could respond, my daughter Awandia emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a cloth. At 27, my only daughter had her father's gentle eyes and my own stubborn chin. She worked as a primary school teacher in the village, bringing home most of her salary to contribute to our household. "Ma, you're back," she said, skillfully inserting herself between me and the strange men. "The food is ready. Should I serve here or—" "No need," Bekong interrupted sharply. "My friends and I are heading to the junction bar, business discussions." He turned to me, lowering his voice. "We'll talk later, Ma, about the Chang papers." After they left, the house seemed to exhale. Awandia put an arm around my shoulders. "What papers, Ma? What is Bekong planning now?" I sank onto a chair, suddenly feeling every year of my age. I walked into my bedroom and pulled out my journal from its hiding place inside a locked shelf built into the wall. As I returned to the living room, I opened to a page where I had carefully noted my property acquisitions. "Your brother wants my land in Chang," I said simply. "He wants to sell it to those men." Awandia's eyes widened as she glanced at the journal entries. "Your university town property? But that's your most valuable holding." "Everything we have," I corrected her. "All these properties were to be for all of you after I am gone." Defang joined us, his young face tight with concern. "He can't take it, can he, Ma? You wouldn't give it to him? Not after he's wasted all the seed money you gave him for his computer business?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Despite having a degree in computer science from the University of Buya, a qualification paid for with countless days of sitting at 3 corners aloe under rain and shine, Bekong had never held a job. "I won't work for anyone," he had declared proudly upon graduation. Believing in his potential, I had given him startup capital not once, but 3 times. Money that disappeared into vague business opportunities that never materialized. "I don't know anymore," I whispered, and the admission broke something inside me. "He is my firstborn, the son of his father." Awandia knelt before me, looking at the meticulous journal entries in my careful handwriting. And we are the children of our mother, a mother who taught us that respect cannot be demanded, only earned. Sleep eluded me that night. In the darkness, memories flooded back. Bekong, as a small boy, proudly bringing home his first school report, helping me carry goods to Alo Market, falling asleep against my shoulder during long church services. When had the change begun? When had gratitude hardened into entitlement, respect curdled into disdain? I recalled how it started during his university years. Each vacation, he returned more distant, more embarrassed by my modest stall at Three Corners. While his siblings still helped on market days, Bekong would stay home, claiming fatigue or important calls to make. By graduation, he wouldn't even walk with me in public. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. The next evening, Bekong returned with a man he introduced as a lawyer. "Ma," he announced, his voice carrying the false patience one might use with a child. "I've brought Mr. Foncha to help us formalize the transfer. It's all very simple." The lawyer, a man with shifty eyes and a document folder, nodded enthusiastically. "Just a signature, Mama. Your son has explained everything." I reached for my journal, clutching it like a shield. "What transfer? I have agreed to nothing." Bekong's smile tightened. "Ma, don't be difficult. We discussed this. The Chang property is wasting just sitting there. With this deal, you'll have cash. Enough to stop that embarrassing junction business." "I have not agreed to sell my land," I repeated louder now. My son stepped closer, dropping his voice. "Listen to me carefully. I owe money to serious people. This deal solves everything. My debts, your retirement, our family's status. Sign the paper." The naked desperation in his eyes shocked me. This was not about business ambitions. My son was in trouble. "What have you done, Bekong?" I whispered. His facade cracked. "Nothing. Just trust me for once. Must you control everything? You're just a bayam selam. What do you know about real estate development or university town economics?" The words struck me, sharp, wounding, as if hurled with intent. Just a bayam selam. Is that all I had become in his eyes? The same bayam selam who had scraped together coins, who went without so he could eat meat, who trudged dusty roads for hours rather than spend the fare reserved for his graduation suit. Was that invisible now? The very woman who, with nothing but grit and foresight, seized the chance to buy land in Chang before the university inflated its worth. Was that so easily dismissed too? Something inside me shifted, not a shattering but a consolidation, a hardening of earth after a storm, pressed tight by loss and labor until nothing more could seep through. I straightened, feeling a cold resolve settle deep in my bones. "Get out," I barked, the words flat as hammered iron. "What?" Bekong's voice cracked, humiliation and shock painting his features. His bravado fell away, leaving only a frightened boy beneath the bluster. "Get out of my house, both of you, now." I bent to unstrap my shoes, each movement deliberate. The gesture was not lost on Bekong. His eyes flicked to my hands. He remembered as a child how my aim had rarely missed. He rose, circling the sofas with a wary, caged tension, his confidence dissolving into fear. His face twisted, desperation leaking through the cracks. "You stubborn old woman, do you have any idea what I've promised these investors, what they'll do to me if I fail?" "That is not my concern," I said, my voice rising, the shoe poised like a weapon in my grip. "Your father spent 8 years molding minds in that village classroom, earning respect with honest, unremarkable pay. I will not let you drag his memory through the mud with your schemes and deceit." The lawyer broke first, scurrying for the door with a flurry of apologies. Bekong was right behind him, slamming the door so hard the old frame splintered. When the echoes faded, I let the shoe drop from my hand and sank to the floor, knees giving way. For the first time in years, I wept without restraint, sobs tearing through me, each one dredging up the years of sacrifice, the ache of betrayal, and the unbearable love that remained. Awandia found me there, collapsed on the cool floorboards, and gathered me into her arms without a word. She held me tightly while the storm of grief and anger broke through me, her silent presence steady as a harbor amid the tempest. When at last my sobs faded to ragged breaths, she stroked my back and pressed her cheek against mine. "It's time, Ma," she murmured, her voice soft and firm. "Call the family council. We cannot wait any longer." For days I had hesitated, torn between pride and dread at washing these troubled matters before the elders. To summon a council was to admit that Bekong's sense of entitlement, his reckless hunger for quick riches, had fractured not just trust, but the fabric of our family. Yet as Awandia steadied me and I looked into her resolute eyes, I understood there was no turning back. The hour had come to lay bare what was festering in silence, to seek wisdom and judgment from those who had weathered storms greater than ours. One evening, 3 days later, my compound filled with relatives, elderly uncles from both sides of the family, aunties, cousins, and Papa Tanji, who doubled as both village chief and the family head of my late husband's family. I had informed Bekong that I would be making important pronouncements about my estate and required him to be present. They gathered quietly in my living room. Once everyone had arrived, cola nuts were shared as a gesture of hospitality, their distinctive flavor marking the threshold of communal purpose. Afterward, Papa Tanji rose, approached the threshold within the house, the family horn in one hand, filled with nothing but water. He poured libations, offering prayers to call upon the divine, the ancestors, and to invoke honesty and guidance in our deliberations. The meeting commenced in an atmosphere of unity, respect, and ancestral presence within these familiar walls. "We have been called to witness and to judge," he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Mama Alem, widow of our brother Tangong, has summoned this council. We listen now to her words. Speak, my wife." All eyes fixed upon me as I rose, the room tightening with expectation and judgment. I had prepared for this moment as if for battle, draping myself in my finest wrapper and head tie, the colors bold, my heart trembling beneath their armor. Around my neck, I wore my wedding beads, their weight both anchor and memory, gifted by Patanji himself on the day I first entered this family as his cousin's bride. Not since my husband's funeral had these beads touched my skin. Tonight, their coldness burned with history and defiance. In my hands, I gripped my battered journal, the cover faded, and the spine softened by decades of secrets pressed between its pages. Holding it, I must have seemed an odd sight, neither widow nor market woman, but something in between, a mother defending her legacy, a silent witness stepping into the light, as if I were a teacher called to command a restless assembly, though I had never taught in a classroom. The council waited, breath held for what I would reveal. I rose slowly, forcing my back straight despite the years of bending. "I thank you all for coming," I began, finding my voice stronger than expected. "I have called you to witness what happens today so that the truth will be known by all." Bekong sat across from me, his eyes darting nervously. He had arrived late, smelling of alcohol, his usual confidence dimmed. "For 23 years, I have lived as a widow," I continued. "When Tangong left this world after only 8 years of marriage, many thought I would crumble. Instead, I built a life from dust and sweat. I raised 3 children without extending my hand for charity." Murmurs of approval rippled through the gathering. What many do not know is that over the years, I purchased several properties, not just here in Alo, but most significantly, plots in Chang. I paused as gasps and surprised comments erupted. I kept this journal, I held up the worn book, recording every franc earned at 3 corners, every investment made. I kept these secrets because a woman's security should be quiet, like a knife hidden in the wrapper. I turned directly to Bekong now. "My firstborn son has decided this land should be his. not through respect or asking, but through demands and threats. He has brought strangers to my home to intimidate me. He has called me ignorant and backwards. He has shamed me before neighbors for being a simple Bayam, forgetting that this trade paid for his computer science degree from the University of Buea. Bekong jumped to his feet. This is not true. I merely suggested a better use for land that sits empty as the eldest son. Silence! Papa Tanji's voice cracked like thunder. You will speak when given permission, not before. Continue, Mama Alem. I nodded gratefully. My son believes that because I am old, because I am a woman with only a SAR SM training, because I sell at a road junction, I have no wisdom about value or investment, no rights to what I've earned, no power to decide my own affairs. My voice remained steady, but I felt fire in my eyes. Today, he will learn differently. I gestured to Awandia, who approached with a small wooden box. From it, I withdrew several documents. These are the deeds to my properties, purchased with my own money, registered in my name alone. I held them up for all to see, but there is more. I removed another document, this one newer and bearing an official stamp from the Minji Credit Union office in Chang, where I have an account. 2 years ago, I traveled to Chang to meet with a financial advisor, a former student of my husband's who has now become an important man at the bank. He explained to me something our people rarely use, but that protects families like ours. It is called a trust fund. Confused murmurs spread through the gathering. Most had never heard of such a thing. A trust fund, I explained, is a legal arrangement that holds property for the benefit of certain people. It is protected by law, stronger than even a will, and cannot be contested by anyone, not even an eldest son. I handed the document to Papa Tanji, who examined it with bewilderment before passing it to a younger relative who worked in government. It's legitimate, the young man confirmed after a careful reading. It's a family trust with Mama Alem as the settler, the creator, and her children as beneficiaries. It has specific terms about how the assets can be used. I nodded. All my properties, the land in Chang, my smaller plots here in Alo, the storage building at the market, my cash in the bank, and even my market stall are now owned by this trust, not by me. I am only its guardian until I am gone. I looked directly at Bekong, whose face had become very dark and hard like granite. The trust has clear instructions. The properties and savings will provide support for Defang's university education and later to build a small house for Awandia whenever she is ready. Funds for emergency needs of any family member who demonstrates responsibility and respect will also be covered by the trust. The trust will be managed by a committee of 3 people, Awandia, my husband's brother Tanyindem, and the bank advisor. I paused, letting the magnitude of my revelation sink in. And you, Bekong, I continued, my voice softening slightly. You are not excluded, but your portion comes with conditions. You may access support from the trust only when you demonstrate 6 months of steady employment or a legitimate business with proper accounting. No more seed more for phantom startups. The money from your portion can only be used for business investment with proper plans approved by the trust committee. Bekong's jaw dropped. You can't do this. It's my birthright, my inheritance. The young government worker shook his head. Actually, she can and has. A trust fund supersedes traditional inheritance customs. It's legally binding. Papa Tanji studied the documents again. This is unusual, but I see the wisdom in it. The children are protected. The property cannot be sold impulsively, and all can benefit if they show good character. He looked up at me with newfound respect. Where did a market woman learn of such sophisticated financial tools? My lips curved into a small smile. From observing the world, Papa. From listening when educated people speak. From reading when others thought I was just counting coins. The same SAR SM training that taught me to keep precise records also taught me to always seek knowledge that protects my family. I turned to the assembly. Many of our people lose everything they worked for because they do not know these modern ways to protect wealth. The white man has these tools. Why shouldn't we use them too? A trust fund means no one, not creditors, not unscrupulous in-laws, not even my own son's bad decisions, can take what I have built for my children's future. Bekong stood rigid with shock and humiliation. You've planned this all along. You never intended to help me build my business. I helped you 3 times, my son, with sums that would make your age mates blink in disbelief, I replied evenly. Each time you returned with empty hands and emptier promises. The trust will help you still, but only when you help yourself first. I faced the gathering. I have called you here not just to witness, but to learn. Let all families know that there are ways to protect what we build, to ensure that our children and grandchildren benefit from our sweat. The trust fund papers include instructions on how others can create similar protections. A heavy silence fell. Even the birds seemed to pause their evening songs. Finally, Papa Tanji stood. The family has witnessed. Mama Alem's decision stands, and we have all learned something valuable today. Let no one challenge what has been done here, on pain of the ancestors' displeasure. One by one, the relatives rose, many coming to examine the trust documents more closely, asking questions about how such arrangements worked. Several of the older men, property owners themselves, took me aside for private consultations. Bekong stood abandoned, his fury curdling into bewilderment. Bekong's eyes flashed with wounded pride as he stepped backward, his voice cutting the air like a blade. You've made your choice, he spat, bitterness hardening each syllable. Then live with it. But don't expect me to come crawling back when age and weakness finally claim you. His words hung heavy in the room, thick with accusation and pain. Outraged, Patanji surged forward, his walking stick trembling in his grip, fury etched in every line of his weathered face. He raised the cane, ready to chastise my son for such brazen disrespect. But Bekong, quick as a startled deer, darted through the front door and vanished into the gathering dusk, leaving only the echo of slammed wood behind him. After Bekong stormed out, the elders did not leave right away. I had cooked plenty and bought some drinks, so we gathered and shared a meal together. Bowls and plates moved from hand to hand as we ate, and the soft glow from the rechargeable solar lamp lit up each face around me. As we talked, I could sense that people were thinking differently, not just about me, but about the ways we could protect what we work for. Some spoke in low voices, still surprised by what they had learned. Others asked questions or simply listened. Papa Tanji watched everyone, his eyes sometimes far away, sometimes thoughtful. Later he came to me quietly and said he was thinking of his own sons, who had given him many headaches over the years. He told me that tomorrow he would come to ask how he too could protect his land and savings so that his hard work would not be wasted. The night felt heavier and lighter at the same time, as if something important had shifted in all of us. When the last guest had drifted into the night, I lingered in the sweet hush that followed. I felt a profound lightness, as if I had cast off a weight that had pressed upon me for years. My 2 steadfast children sat close, silent, faces glowing in the gentle pool of light from the rechargeable solar lamp. Defang broke the silence. Will he come back, Ma? I looked toward the door where my son had disappeared in a hurry. I don't know. That is his choice now. Awandia clutched the trust papers. You've secured our future in ways I never imagined. But how did you really learn about trust funds? They don't teach that at Sarsem. My smile softened as I reached out, my hand lingering lovingly on her cheek. Do you remember the professor from the university, the one who always stopped by my stall to buy palm oil, even when others hurried past? I asked. For 3 years he would linger and talk with me while I served him, never looking down on me as just a bayam selam. Instead, he saw a woman eager to know more about the world. We spoke of many things, but one day He happened to witness Bekong speaking to me harshly, demanding money with no regard for respect. After Bekong stormed off, the professor pulled me aside. He told me plainly that I should protect myself and my children because sometimes what grows in the heart of an elder son can become dangerous, something he called a monster born of bitterness and entitlement. His words struck me deeply. I realized that wisdom does not always come dressed in fine clothes or from grand houses. Sometimes it arrives quietly at a roadside market for those humble enough to listen. I took his advice seriously and it changed the course of our lives. He was the one who told me about trust funds. He recommended a good lawyer who helped me set it up. Later that night, as the full moon bathed the Lebialem highlands in silvery light, I lingered at the edge of my compound. I drew a deep breath, the cool air tinged with the sharp, clean scent of the old eucalyptus trees, planted generations ago when the Germans first set foot in these hills. From afar, life echoed softly through the darkness, a baby's plaintive wail, the rolling laughter of women sharing stories, a man's voice calling for his dog. Each familiar sound reminded me of the woven fabric of my community and all I fought to protect. That night, I felt an unfamiliar energy coursing through me, a renewed sense of purpose, as if the burdens of years had been lifted. The urge to write came upon me suddenly and powerfully, an almost physical pull I could not ignore. I knew that after all that had transpired, tonight's reflections would mark an important turning point, not just for me, but for my entire family's legacy. I returned indoors and went for my journal, writing the day's events in my careful script, just as my teacher husband had taught me years ago. Tomorrow's entry would begin a new chapter. I thought of my husband Tangong, wondering if he watched from wherever the ancestors dwelled. I had protected what mattered. I had finally found my voice. Tomorrow I would rise before dawn as always. I would carry my goods to Three Corners Aloe and arrange my stall just so. But something would be different. The stoop in my back a little straighter, the weight on my heart a little lighter. For today justice had been served, not with violence or vengeance, but with truth spoken after years of silence. And in that truth, I had found not just power, but peace.